You're listening to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Did you know that you could build a tax-free pool of wealth that's liquid and accessible all your life while building your retirement nest egg? Gain full control of your financial future and stop relying on the government and banks. The wealthy have already discovered this wealth-building secret. Now it's your turn to get financially secure without following the conventional wisdom that keeps you in debt to banks. Now here's your host, Valerie LaRocque.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Thank you for listening. Today, I thought I would touch on the topic again of disability coverage and some benefits that come along with that. Disability coverage specifically, and life, I guess both, have been on my heart and mind recently as I've had some loved ones around me become sick, and it just breaks my heart every time something like that happens, and especially when they don't have coverage already in place. And now I know they are likely uninsurable for the rest of their lives, or at least some of the people that I'm thinking of. Not every one of them is not uninsurable for the rest of their lives, but just when something happens and you wish they had that coverage in place and that you wish you would have helped them with that, or that they would have allowed you to help them with that before they became to a point where they can't get the coverage anymore. I mentioned before that I have a very good friend who I adore, who discovered some months back that she has a brain tumor, and she has had it since then. She's had it partially removed, which is terrific, except that her healing isn't 100%. She's not feeling herself 100%, and it's very devastating to her. And she's still in treatment. She still has more treatment to go. But it breaks my heart that before this happened, we didn't get something in place that could have helped her, that could have helped bring income in case she needed it, or she could have gone into for income, or that she would be able to diversify in the way of building up a guaranteed vehicle using whole life insurance, or be able to lock that coverage in for her family. Most likely she's uninsurable going forward, although you never know. She could be 5 years out, 10 years out or something, and the underwriter could feel that it is a safe risk and that they'd be okay with it. You really just never know how that's going to go. But something like that is a pretty big deal. So it just makes me sad that we didn't get something in place before the tumor was discovered. I have another loved one who randomly came down with flu-like symptoms. This was pretty recent, and ended up in the hospital, ended up in the ICU, actually. And it sounded like, just from what was going on, maybe it was a cold, maybe it was a flu that started off, and then they thought maybe she had pneumonia, and then they thought she had double pneumonia. And she's been sick for over a week, and they can't seem to figure out what the cause is. And it breaks my heart again that we didn't get disability in place in case this is starting off on a track to needing that type of coverage. I wish we could have gotten that in place before this happened. It could have been a help, but thankfully she did have some coverage through work. And so we're still in the process of finding out what that short-term coverage is, because right now it would just be short-term disability that she would be able to access. Long-term disability is after you've been unable to work for a longer time, say like 90 days. 90 days is a common, what they call elimination period, meaning you have been unable to work for those 90 days before your benefit will kick in. So I'm grateful that she does have some short-term disability, and we're looking into that right now, and some other stuff through work. But oftentimes your work coverage does not cover your full ability, the full amount that you could be qualified for disability, because you cannot be qualified for 100% of your income, more like around 60% of your income. And oftentimes work benefits don't even reach that full 60 some percent that you can be covered for. Or if your employer is paying for that benefit, then if you need to use those benefits, they will be taxable to you. And that will lower the amount that you actually receive if you were to claim disability. Now, I have another good friend who sounds like he was just having a good time playing with the kids, playing on a slip and slide, and he fell some kind of way and tore his bicep. Now, this person is a firefighter, and so he is not able to work. He had to get surgery. It's a whole thing. They thought The doctors were thinking he wouldn't be able to go back to work for about 6 months. And so definitely not a quick healing, but he's doing well, but he has to have all that time off of work. Luckily for this person, I'm so thankful we do have a disability contract in place. And actually, it also includes an accident policy with this particular company. And so he was able to submit claims for certain things that have happened. Like he had surgery and he had to go to the hospital and he had to go to the doctor. And these different things added up to different amounts that he would be able to claim and receive benefits for, to receive reimbursement for. And actually, I think reimbursement's not really the best word to use because it's just a fixed amount for each of those things that happened. But I'm grateful that his particular long term care policy came with this accident policy as well, where he was able to utilize something because he wouldn't be able to access his long term disability until at least 90 days have gone by with absolutely no work. And of course, they need resources right now. They're used to having him bring home a check. And luckily, he too has some coverage through work, through disability, through short term disability. So it's not a terrible situation there. But I'm just relieved that we were able to get something in place that he could access in this time of need and in this time of chaos when you don't know where you're going to get that income from, when you're just freaking out because you know you can't go to work, you're not sure what's going to happen. I'm just so grateful that we did have something in place to help that situation. I was talking a while back to a beautiful friend of mine who I adore, who had told me she slipped and fell while at a resort having a lovely time. Slipped and fell, hit her head, had a big giant bump. And that's really what got me thinking that I should share some of these stories and talk more about disability because we were talking about how she fell down and she was just couldn't believe it. She just couldn't believe she fell down. It's just so scary when you fall and hit your head. Of course, that reminded me of the time that I fell down and hit my head about 2 years ago at a baseball game in Ohio. So embarrassing, not cool. In a place full of colleagues from around the nation. So that was scary and unexpected. You think this would never happen to me. How could that ever happen? And then it does. I think just as your body ages, it just doesn't do the things you think it's going to do. It does its own thing sometimes, or you think you're very sturdy or very stable or very balanced, and then all of a sudden you're not. So there I was lying on the floor looking up at all of my colleagues that have different friends and colleagues, financial advisors, insurance professionals, and they're telling me stories of such and such person they knew or heard of who'd fallen down and then died the next day. So they're saying you better get to the hospital ASAP and get a CT scan and all of that. And after hearing story after story, of course, that's just what I did. Got to meet the baseball player's ER doctor on the way out or while I was there. He came up to see and check on me, which was cool, I guess you could say, and then got wheeled out on a stretcher, high-fiving fans all the way to the ambulance. So it certainly was an experience, I will say. But I was talking to my friend about our shared getting bumped on the head experiences, and I mentioned to her that if she had had a long-term disability policy, well, she would have been able to get paid out for her injury for any medical visits or visits to the clinic or the ER. She would have been able to be reimbursed or paid for that injury up to a certain amount. So, the type of policy that I have actually would reimburse expenses up to 50% of my disability benefit, up to 3,000. 3,000 is the max. So 50% up to 3,000. However, that benefit that is just like the one I have is no longer available on policies across the nation. There are only 4 states now that allow for that particular type of benefit payment. It's called non-disabling injury benefit. The name has changed. It's now called benefit enhancement with this particular company that I'm talking about because not all companies will name everything the same. And I'm not sure if other companies that offer disability offer that same feature. But now, if you have an injury, they will simply pay you $500 flat. So if you have some sort of injury, you submit a claim, you receive a $500 check. It doesn't matter if it didn't cost that much or if your health insurance paid for it. They're just going to send you the $500. Or if you live in one of the states that still has the older version of the benefit, and say you have a monthly disability benefit of $10,000, so you get too sick or hurt to work, and you'll start receiving $10,000 a month once your elimination period passes or your waiting period. So if your benefit is 10,000 and you have an injury that costs 5,000 and they say they'll pay 50% of your benefit, which would be $5,000 or 3,000 whichever is lower. And so they're going to pay the 3,000 on that one because that's the maximum that they'll pay. 50% of your base benefit or 3,000 whichever is the lower of the two. So I wanted to point out in this episode that it's possible to receive payment from your disability contract even if you're not claiming actual disability. If you have a long-term disability contract that has these other features, it's possible to receive some benefit from it even without having to claim full disability. From the disability policies that I have already been paid in benefits over $5,000 just from hitting my head at the baseball park and also spraining my ankle years back. I sprained my ankle. It cost $750 at the doctor. My health insurance covered most of that, but I submitted the claim. The request was for me to send in the gross cost of the medical visit, my clinic visit, and then they sent me a check for the cost of that. So I've been highlighting this one benefit that you can get paid out on a long term disability contract for an injury to your body or your natural teeth. But truly, I feel that disability insurance is important for exactly what it is, for providing a tax free income stream at the time you need it most, when you've become too sick or too hurt to work. It's nice that there are these other features and things where you can access benefit even without claiming full disability, because, of course, hopefully you don't ever have to claim full disability. And then throughout your life, you might have been able to receive checks here and there or reimbursement or payment for injuries that you've had. So you feel like you've gotten some use out of your disability policy, even if you never do have to claim disability. But I find that it's so important. I don't even want to cross the street without my disability policy being in force because you never know what could happen tomorrow. I truly believe that anyone who's earning an income really should have disability insurance in force. They should have this coverage. Because if you are unable to work due to a sickness or injury for a really long time, let's just say it lasts a long time and you really can't work, how are you going to pay your mortgage? How are you going to pay your utilities? How are you going to make your car payment? What about your phone bill? Food, you still got to eat. Your health insurance, you're still going to have to pay for that. And that's certainly going to be a fortune. So you are going to be struggling like crazy. At a time like that, being disabled and not being able to collect your regular paycheck, you can just forget about being able to build something awesome, like a whole life policy for the infinite banking concept. If you had a disability that lasted years, you may end up even depleting all of your retirement savings before you get close to retirement age. Most people don't even have 3 to 6 months of emergency savings saved up, and so wouldn't make it very long in the case of a disability without having some disability coverage. If you have some coverage at work, of course, that's great. And it will be factored into the calculation of how much additional disability insurance you might be eligible for. Just remember, though, when you leave that workplace, your next workplace might not have the same coverage or might not have any disability coverage. So it's always good to have individual policy if you can. Because if the time comes that you need that income, you are really going to be thankful that you have a policy in place if you're unable to work. And if you were to receive an approval from a disability insurer and it's not exactly what you were hoping for, or you feel like the rating wasn't fair to you, or you feel like the cost is too high, or they excluded something that you feel may be the very thing that causes disability, I would say accept that policy anyway. If the cost became unaffordable, there certainly can be some changes made to the contract to bring it back within your budget. But if they exclude something like your back or your knee or something that was already bothering you that you've been going to the doctor for, don't just dwell on that and feel like, oh, that's exactly what would give me disability. And I might as well not accept it now because that's what's going to end up causing me disability. There are plenty of other things out there that can cause disability. So I would say accept it, and we can always try to improve rating later or even try to get that exclusion dropped off of your policy at some future time if you're doing much better or that condition has gone away. Disability underwriters do some very, very thorough underwriting. And remember that other insurers can see what the other underwriters have seen or said or what their ratings were. And so Even if you don't feel that you don't like the pricing or the rating or something, I'm sure most likely it is fair. And we can always go back and talk to the underwriter and share your concerns or try to talk to the doctor if you feel something wasn't clear in your records. But usually that underwriter is doing a very thorough job of looking into your medical history, and they're just using the information to the best of their ability to make their best decisions. My husband received an exclusion on his disability policy for his back because he had been to a chiropractor many, many times for back pain. And so they looked through all that and said, "We're sorry, we're going to have to exclude your back." But these days, his knees are really what's bothering him. So I'm really grateful. Of course, we accepted it. It was a bummer we didn't get, or that we had the back exclusion. But of course, the coverage is important anyway. So we locked it in. And I'm glad that we have that in place. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you put the coverage in place and you lock it in and you get that rating as soon as possible before something catastrophic happens and you no longer are able to get disability coverage or life insurance coverage. Just lock it in when you can as soon as possible because you never know if tomorrow you're going to end up in the hospital and now you are uninsurable for the rest of your life. You have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Just keep in mind you can always try to get a better health rating later and improve your existing policy and apply that better health rating to it. You can go out, you can work on your health, you can do everything, you can diet, you can exercise, do all the things that you wish you had done maybe before you had underwritten for that current policy right now, but still lock it in and then you can still work on that stuff and try to get that better rating at a later time. So this podcast really was just dedicated to reminding you all that getting the coverage as soon as possible while you're healthy and able to be approved is really important, whether it's life insurance or disability insurance. Certainly, they're both very important. And if you'd like to do the infinite banking concept and you think that you are hoping to do that at some point, but you're not able to do it now, or you don't think it will fit into your budget, you can always lock in some term insurance right now with your current health rating and then convert that later when you're able to begin funding the infinite banking concept or the whole life policy for the purpose of the infinite banking concept. And so if you're feeling ready to look into coverage, whether it be term, disability, whole life, you want to begin the infinite banking concept, if you're ready to get into underwriting or learn more about how you could proceed or start a plan for yourself, and you'd like to partner with me, feel free to reach out to me at Valerie@alphaomegawealth.com. I look forward to meeting you, and thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great week. Take care.